Hi there everyone, and welcome to workshop number 2 in Flesh Out Your Novel, Organizing the Meat. This is March the 11th, 2011, and we are working on the pivotal points and actions in your book today. What I want you to think about is where the actions are in your book. And there are 2 points or pivotal points that I want you to focus on today, and a midpoint which is at the center of your book. What I'm basing these points on is screenwriting techniques, and I found it very useful to be able to separate my novels into sections to be able to make sure that the action is moving through my novel the way that it should be. I've asked you all to re-watch or watch Star Wars: A New Hope, the first movie in the Star Wars series that came out when I was quite a young girl. And I'm using this movie as an example of explaining to you different elements throughout my workshops because it's a point of reference I think a lot of people will find easy to relate to. The movie is seen by most people, has been seen by most people, easy to find, and it's easier than suggesting a book because if you haven't read the book, well, then it's going to be difficult for you to follow what I'm talking about. So this way, it's easy for you to sit down and watch the movie and be able to understand more clearly the assignments that I have asked you to do throughout these 6 workshops. The first pivotal point in your novel usually comes about a quarter of the way into your book. It is called plot point 1 in screenwriting techniques, and it is where the real action, the true action, starts to begin in your novel. Usually before this point, all of your characters, main characters, are set up and they've all been introduced to your reader, maybe not to each other, but certainly to your reader. And this is when the story really jumps from being just background information, introductory scenes, to the real, true beginning of where the rest of your book is going to go. In the Star Wars movie, the first pivotal point in the movie, or what they would call the first plot point, is when Luke, Obi-Wan, and the droids take off from the planet where they met Han Solo and Chewbacca, and they're being pursued by the Empire, and they're all en route for Alderaan. And this is really where the whole story starts to take off. You go from being on planets or being in different scenes setting up the main characters to Luke deciding that there's nothing left for him at Tatooine, and he goes off with Obi-Wan and Han and Chewbacca as their pilots, and he goes off into a universe, into a world that he's never seen, and it's the true beginning of the movie Star Wars: A New Hope. Most of us have this beginning, have this scene, have this moment in our novels about a quarter of the way in. It's important to let your reader know where your main character is going, where your protagonist is going, and it pushes the reader through into the second act of your novel, which is the majority of your novel. It's got half of the content in it, and you want your reader to want to keep on going at that. The second pivotal point, or plot point, as they talk about it in screenwriting, in your novel is going to be 3/4 of the way through your novel. It's right at the end of Act 2, right when Act 3 or the last quarter of your book is beginning. This is the next major pivotal point of action that leads your reader on into the last quarter of your novel. It's key to keeping your reader, again, moving through the book, but it's also some kind of a transformation, crisis, some kind of a major scene happens here to set up the ending of your book. The second pivotal point in the Star Wars movie: A New Hope is when the rebellion wages war on the Death Star with Luke on their side as a pilot. And this is setting up the battle that will ensue, and also leads the reader into wondering who's going to win, who's going to become victorious, how is this all going to play out. And so that is the second pivotal point in the movie, and usually at the end of our novel, closer to the end of our novel, we have the same type of situation setting up. Your second pivotal point is often a place in your book about 3/4 of the way through where your protagonist has to make a decision that will push them into how they change and develop towards the end of the novel, how they're evolving through the novel towards the end. And that is a really important place to have a scene that creates for your reader an idea of where they could potentially be going, and it moves your reader through your book. So that's your pivotal point, number 2 in your novel. Another point in your novel that's key to keeping your reader moving through your novel is the midpoint. This is about halfway through your novel. It separates your Act 2 into 2 units of dramatic action, which I'm going to talk about a little further on in one of the later workshops. The midpoint is what I consider to be like a map. It keeps you moving from the pivotal point 1 and to the pivotal point 2. It keeps your reader on track and yourself as a writer to make sure that your character, your main character, is developing and evolving throughout your novel, and that there isn't any part in your novel that tends to lag or slow down. Because if it's going to happen, most likely I've found that it's going to happen in Act 2, it's going to happen in that big section in the middle of your novel. And so the midpoint allows you to make sure that your action is continuing throughout your book. So I talk about that in the workshop material and ask you to outline that as well. The midpoint in the movie is when Luke goes and rescues the princess with Han and Chewbacca. And this is a crucial scene that keeps the movie moving through and also gives us a huge amount of information about Luke's character, because he is remaining consistent to the character that we were presented with at the beginning of the movie. And so we realize that he is the honorable, responsible young man that he was portrayed in the earlier part of the film. This is important for your reader to know, that the main character's personality is not changing. In fact, his responsibility, his sense of honor is actually becoming stronger because he's acting on the earlier characteristics that we saw in the movie. It's the same idea for your main character in your novel. The Act 2, the midpoint, the center of your novel, is the great opportunity for you to really develop your main character and the characters surrounding him or her. And so that's why I encourage you to find your midpoint as well as the other 2 pivotal points. So I will see you all next week in workshop number 3 on March the 18th. Until then, thank you very much for being with me today. My name is Jacqueline Snider, and I'll see you at workshop number 3.